We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And if you've been with us the last few weeks, you know we are smack dab in the middle of our Endgame replay. Last week we covered basically the first half of the film, everything up to the time heist, which leads us to this week where we are covering the time heist and the final big culminating battle. So it's going to be a very fun one. As we always say, it is more fun to come along on this journey with us, having recently rewatched Endgame. So if you didn't for last week, definitely recommend you do this week. And if you didn't check out last week's episode, I think you'll get more out of this week by listening to last week. Now, with all those caveats out of the way, Katie, kick it off.
Well, I want to first kind of level set where we left off last week so that we remember. We did up until roughly the time heist. Sort of. We had to discuss parts of the time heist in order to actually tell some of the story, but we kind of cut right before they all like did their see ya in a minute and then went away.
Rip.
Honestly, we can just go that way. Let's start at form here. Honestly, because I thought this would be hard for me, I understood it differently. I think seeing it now, obviously, I think in some way I thought, and I do still think it should have been Clint, if I'm being honest. In the ripe year of 2025, am I still saying it should have been Clint? Yeah, a little. But I do think, I don't know, I think watching it back, I understood her reasoning differently. Like, I'm not as attached to the character as I obviously was in 2019. So I can kind of come away and be like, I get the reasoning. The man has a family. She didn't feel she really did, which I guess is arguable now because like we know Yelena exists, we know Melina, like we know they're all in existence. So
Yeah.
I do think like even I think Tony's line about like, does she have a family? And Steve was like, she had us. And I know like they didn't know, but I do feel weird about that, having retconned her family in.
That's the risk you run when you do movies that are set like prior to two movies before. Like it's one thing to
Yeah.
do a Captain Marvel where you're like, that's so many years removed, but like to have that movie set the way it was, like basically in between Civil War and Endgame and Civil War and Infinity War, it like makes it so much more there's so much more to affect it because it's so much more recent.
Right. And so I think in that way I struggled a little bit, but I did understand her reasoning. I do think Clint had a lot more at the time to kind of live for, and she wanted to make that sacrifice because we see, and I don't think this hit as much the first time around, but like we do see how she's the one who's essentially obsessed with getting everybody back. And so for her, it's so important to be like, if there is a way to do this and whatever, like I need to be the one to do it. I feel like I need to be the one to do it. So I do think it hit a little differently. I didn't cry. And
Wow.
that's a big step for me. Yeah, that's a big step. And I think that's because I was kind of more understanding of why she felt she was the one to do it. And I don't know. I think after watching kind of how things played out too, I was like, I don't know what her future would have been post Endgame era. Now that we're here, I'm not sure what she would have done. Versus for Clint, like there is a torch passing. Like you brought Yelena in regardless. That's not really a torch passing when she already existed as a Black Widow. But like I'm watching Clint and enjoying watching Clint train his next the next one to take on his mantle. So I do think like knowing how I saw that versus what I think her future could or could not have been, I don't know. Like I don't know if it would have really made sense to keep her character going.
Wow, I honestly like that is quite the statement for you to say after. I mean, I know how devastated you were after Natasha died. So that's quite the statement to hear coming from you.
It's not even devastation after she died. It was fully in the movie theater
I mean,
sobbing while nobody
yes.
else was reacting the way I was. I was like, hold on, why is nobody else crying? I was the only one.
I mean, I know. I know you were dealing with it in the moment, but I also know, like, even afterwards, like, for many years, you were like, my girl, why? But I hear you. I think I never really struggled truthfully understanding her motivation. I think it always made sense to me, like, that she was willing to make that sacrifice play, because I think when you go back to the beginning of the film and we talked about kind of how everybody had adjusted, we'll say, to whatever had what had happened at the end of Infinity War, you actually had Steve somewhat moving forward, right? He's like leading these group therapy sessions. Tony was living life with his wife and daughter and was happy as he could be. Hulk is super happy, actually, if you think about it. Like he's finally mastered quote unquote his inner demon. Thor is struggle bussing, but like he's fixated on it, but in a different way than Natasha is. You see that she is so unable to move forward, right? Like she's the only one still living at the compound. She's the only one making people check in and doing all these, you know, global and even universal, essentially like Avengers management is like kind of what she's doing. And, she takes it upon herself when Rhodey shares the information about what Clint is doing. Like, she takes it on upon herself to fix it. And yes, part of that is because she and Clint are friends, but also because she is the only one who still feels this level of like responsibility. And when she's talking to Steve about, like, I didn't really feel like I had a purpose until I became an Avenger, she's never able to move past that. So it does, to me, it always made sense that she was going to make that sacrifice play because she is being the quintessential Avenger. She's never stopped being one. She never moved on.
That's fair.
I still cried. I still cried. I still think it's sad, to watch these two best friends who love each other so much to the point where, they're willing to sacrifice their own life so that the person that they love lives is the complete opposite of what we saw with Thanos and Gamora, right? She didn't want to die. He had to toss her off the ledge. And so it shows a very different type of love, one that's much more pure than what we had seen. I guess it was technically years later, but we saw it previously. In terms of what you were saying about how her story could have moved forward, I actually disagree because I think she actually could have had a very interesting storyline. I think even if you think about her film, right? You had all those widows who were basically set out into the world after being freed from that program. And if she truly wanted to, create a found family, she actually could have worked to help lead and rehabilitate them and set them on the straight and narrow the same way that Clint did for her and like pay that forward. That's just one example of something that she could have done. But I think, like, even looking at the comics, there's so many storylines that are unexplored with her. I know you're going to love this, but like there's a Winter Widow storyline that never got explored because she's dead now. Like there are just so many things. And I think to say that you're not sure where she would have gone, I think just be a little more creative there because there's options.
It's not that. I think knowing what we have slated, or not even slated anymore, knowing what we've like seen, I don't think she fits anywhere. And I'm not saying that because I don't love her. Obviously, I love the character, so I'm saying that out of pure like love for her. I think the second you bring Yelena into this, you are aging out the idea of Natasha. And that was always the intention. I truly think like it never would have made sense for me to have Yelena and Natasha in existence at the same time. Especially then seeing how Yelena goes into the Thunderbolts and things like that. We don't have a real Avengers team. And let me tell you, if the one Sam is building would be like Natasha would not be on that team if her sister is on the other one.
That is
Like
true.
that's just not how that would work. And then what? Like we don't need two widows. Like I just think knowing Yelena's storyline was always a plan after the fact. I just think it would have run Natasha's dry. I also, for a fact, as much as I would have loved to see Winter Widow, never would have done it. If they didn't do it from the start, it made no sense to do it now. Bucky is rehabilitated. Natasha is no longer a widow. The actual like depth to me of that storyline starts in the Red Room with him training the widows. And if you are not going to actually tell that part of the story, now it's just weird. Like I don't need Bucky and Natasha to randomly fall in love all these years later. Like tell the full story, I think. So I just think future wise, especially with Yelena on the board, I just don't think she had a path for her. I also think, let's be fair, if Hawkeye hadn't been as well received as it was, there's probably a great chance Clint wasn't going to come back after Hawkeye. Like that was his song away as well. But a lot of us liked Hawkeye, and there's been a lot of talk about bringing season 2. That's not to say even after season 2 he's necessarily going to be like super around. They were kind of phasing his character out in phase 3 already, in like like with the whole house arrest crap and all that. He literally wasn't in Infinity War. So well, yeah, no, because the scene of him with his kids is at the beginning of Endgame.
Yeah.
He literally was not in Infinity War. So I just think when you kind of put that into perspective, I just don't think she had that path. And that's okay. I think as far as Clint, we've seen kind of where his path does go and his successor, and obviously how she fits into the story. So I think that made a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I for the first time didn't really look at it, or I guess I did look at it from that perspective of like she is the true Avenger
Yeah.
and she stuck around. Like, that was the first time I paid attention. I think when you're watching it that first time around, you're just like, I just remember being anxious. Like
Yes.
you don't know what's happening, so
Yeah.
you're just like really on edge the whole time. And so I do think that was probably overshadowing some of the things that would help that make more sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of, and we talk about this literally every time we do a replay episode. But I love doing these because there's so much you missed the first time. There's so much subtlety. There's so much like character development or the way that people are reacting to certain things that you just don't catch because to your point, like actually I watched Endgame like 3 days after having my appendix removed. Don't recommend because both laughing and sobbing like 3 days post having an organ taken out of your body is extremely painful. Although I was never in a million years going to miss opening weekend, so worth it. But all that aside, like I just remember like kind of wanting to throw up like cuz I was so much like what's going to happen? How are they
Yeah.
going to fix this? Like and then Natasha dies like halfway through the film. And like so you started off the film watching the whole Barton family get obliterated or dusted, but like obliterated. And then at the same time, halfway through the film, you've got Natasha dying. And then at the end, spoiler alert, Tony dies. So like it just at regular intervals, it was just like death, death, death. And the whole time I just was like, oh my God, who's next? Who's next? Who's next?
Yeah.
It like did not let you like it's very fun film to watch now, but like that first watch did not let you breathe because you just were like also traumatized from the last one. You're like, I wasn't expecting like half of the world to get dusted and like half of our Avengers to not survive that film. So I had like real trust issues too. And then they went and killed Natasha, and I was like, what's happening?
I honestly have to say, when they killed Natasha, that was the start of my trust issues and realizing that they would not pull out, like, they had no issue pulling out the stops because she's your OG, you know?
Yeah.
Although, I have to say, what her death set in emotion to me was very interesting because for the first time, you see the Avengers without the only woman on their team.
Yeah.
And the one brain cell that would just kind of bounce around when they were talking, I just was like, this makes so much sense. Even during the whole, like, when Thor was trying to be almighty and be like, I'll do the snap or whatever, like, obviously there was seriousness to it, but just some of the quips back and forth, like I just sat there and I was like, yeah, this is because these are like five men who now are like not sure how to like act like it was just it was very funny to almost have the like the mom of the group not among them.
Yeah, or the brains, really. The
Yeah,
brains of
yeah.
the operation. I mean, yes,
Yes.
Tony's, like, book smart, but, like, he's also kind of an idiot. So,
Well, and they always argue with each other. So
yeah.
that's why I thought it was so funny too in like those scenes because you could see them like going at each other. And I'm like, you just know Natasha would just have shut it down.
Yeah. She would be like, "You're being like idiots. Like, can we please just, like, focus on the task at hand?"
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I did think that was really funny. But okay, that's Vormir, right? We got the Soul Stone. Great. Thor and Rocket go to Asgard for the ether. I mean, if I'm going to be quite honest, this was fine. I watched it. I saw him talk to his mother. It didn't really hit. Like, I just kind of was like, okay. I think it's because I'm just in general very angry with where they take Thor's character, which we'll highlight a lot more next week's episode. But I think because I just feel such anger every time he's on the screen because they make him to be such an idiot low key. Like, it just, I was like, whatever. So you get the ether, let's move on.
So, this is how I have disassociated from Bro Thor. And I have decided that every time I watch those scenes, I'm just going to imagine like a truly like devastated dealing with mental health issues Thor because I like that part of the storyline in the
Yeah,
sense that
that makes
like
sense.
it's 100% a real and valid response to that level of like perceived failure, grief. And he spent so much time actually with his mom talking about the pressure that he's been under his whole life. And I was like, dang, okay, Thor, okay. I like this conversation. Like, this is a deep and like meaningful conversation. So, I've decided that when he's having those scenes in that conversation in my head, I'm picturing like regular Thor who like has two brain cells to rub together, not Bro Thor. So
Fair.
that's how I got through those scenes and was able to find them like more meaningful because I was like, if you take the jokes away and you strip away all of the like forced lightheartedness that they've put on what should have been a serious and meaningful conversation or like about him dealing with this, he actually does have a meaningful conversation with his mom about the pressure and what he's dealing with. And she basically was like, "You're a failure. Cool. So is everyone else." Like this
Yeah.
idea that you're never going to fail is so, false, and it's putting yourself it's holding yourself to a standard that you're never going to reach. And so I think that was an important conversation for him to have and very meaningful, and it did kind of bring up some emotion for me. I was like, okay, like if you think about ignore all the crap that they did to him, like if you think about that conversation at its core, it's actually quite moving and quite meaningful. And so that's my hot tip for everyone. If you are also annoyed by Bro Thor, disassociate a little bit and just like focus on like the meat and potatoes and not so much like the version of Thor who's having that conversation.
No, and that's fair because maybe that would have had a different impact on me. I also think, to be fair, in regards to the whole rest of the movie, it's the most low key of the stone gathering.
Yeah.
So I think maybe because of that, it also gets kind of backed up because obviously, like, Natasha literally dies in one of them. The other three are still pinging around their one brain cell and are out there trying to, like, and then Scott's there too, which is not helping. That's like a quarter of a brain cell. So, like, I just, I think there's so much going on that those kind like Thor's entire thing and the ether idea and all that. And also, like, even Rocket actually getting the ether, like, I
It's
feel like
not on
all of that
screen.
no, it just, like, happens so casually,
Yeah.
and then they just, like, move on with it. So, I think maybe that was also part of it where I just was like, "Listen, there's, like, bigger things to worry about," and I definitely knew they went back to Asgard, but, like, I was not worried about it.
I also just like you all know, like Asgard is one of my absolute favorite MCU locales, and like I understand why it had to be destroyed, but at the same time, like truly one of the most devastating moments in the MCU to me is when they destroyed Asgard. So anytime we get to go back, I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling good about this. I just like being in Asgard and it makes me happy.
I do miss Asgard, I really do. I think it was so beautiful, and I understood what they did, even though the Russo brothers undid it, but, like, I understood everything that happened in Ragnarok and why it happened. Either way, I do think it was in the end probably very meaningful and needed to be part of the conversation. I'm so angry with how Thor is handled in this movie that I think it's really hard for me to appreciate it, if I'm being honest.
Fair.
But I want to discuss the other three on their really ambitious road to the stones, if you will, in 2012. Obviously, we know they fail to a degree.
Yes.
They do not get one of the stones.
They don't get two of the stones, right?
No, they got two.
Well, I know they got the time stone, but I don't think they got the scepter, did they?
They got the scepter.
Oh, that's right. They send Scott back for the scepter. That's right.
Yeah.
Tony's the only one who screws up.
Well, I guess to be fair, the Hulk hating the stairs has screwed everybody up, actually.
I mean, yes, but like that was like Tony's mark, right? Like Hulk rolled out of there with the stone that was his responsibility. Steve rolled out of there with the stone that was his responsibility.
Yes.
Tony rolled out of there empty-handed.
Yes.
I'm never going to take a moment where I can't be like, Tony screwed the pooch. And this is a Tony screwed the pooch moment.
Yes. Yeah, I fully agree. I do think, I mean, we get some great scenes from all this. Obviously, it's a nice little throwback to our home, Avengers, the first one, the most comfortable of all the movies. But I do have to say, we're not, well, actually, let's first say, we're not going to talk about the whole, not Soul Stone, Time Stone part of it. We did touch on that last week. That was part of that bigger conversation. So I'm not going to go into that part of it. But I do have to say, watching like the whole scene with Loki and now knowing how that pans, I definitely was like, this is weird. Like, this is just weird knowing like where this character ends up going. And then it also, we don't have to get into this right this second, but then it also made me sit there and go, nope, this just further confuses the whole time thing and the entirety of the TVA to me as I'm watching them do all this stuff. It's just further confusing me.
I know you said we don't have to go into it, but we kind of do. Like, you can't say
Well,
that.
I don't want to go into it yet because there's more later, I think, is more like a more valuable time to go into it.
Okay, this is the only thing I'll say because we're here now and it ties to last week's conversation around the stones. And so, like, because we're here in 2012, let's just like have the conversation. But, and I'll keep it brief because I also, I'm not a fan of this topic. But it is interesting because he starts an entire branch, but then it's, I guess, like you have the TVA who prunes it, but then like that in 2012, like we're technically like missing a stone now. Like, I don't understand how any of that works.
No.
Especially when you like think about like what the Ancient One had said like 15 minutes before. Then you throw in the TVA, which kind of like band-aids it because technically he did start another branch by like going into the desert. Then the TVA prunes it, and then we like find out that the stones end up at the TVA where they're like completely useless, which was like, oh my god, I can't even, I'm still like years later like horrified by that. But I still just like, you're trying to like marry all of these different ways to talk about time travel and like all these different rules, and like comes back to like problem numero uno about the not the Infinity Saga, sorry, about the multiverse saga, which is that they didn't go into it with a clear set of rules and they said every director, you can interpret it the way you want. And here we are.
Well, and I also think the problem is Endgame itself is not synonymous with itself.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really confusing. So then when, like, because you can't even watch Endgame and be like, this all made sense, and then watch like Loki or something and be like, ooh, I don't understand because this is different than Endgame. No, like in the entirety of the 3-hour movie, the whole idea of the time travel and everything about it, taking out what we now know, still in itself doesn't inherently make sense.
No.
Like, not how they explained it. So, and okay, the reason I wanted to wait was because the big thing about this is obviously Steve staying.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense at all.
No, he is in a, well, okay, I'm gonna bring in a literally hot off the presses like rumor, but there's a rumor now that Tom Hiddleston, I think it's Loki, has been seen filming in the 1940s at Peggy and Steve's house. So he straight up created a whole new universe by going back and staying. And then supposedly the rumor is, and I don't know if it's that Tom Hiddleston's been seen or if this is just a rumor and people are now just like adding on that he's been seen to like make it seem more credible. Truly, it's the internet. Like, take it with a grain of salt. But the running rumor right now is that there is a scene where Loki goes and gets that version of Cap from the 1940s from his house with Peggy from the end of Endgame when he goes and creates that universe. Oh,
I'm gonna sit
she
here.
has a face on that like means that bad things are coming. Like it is the face that I truly run the opposite direction when she wears. So y'all are in for it.
Here's the thing. We're not going to get into Steve's character arc in depth in this episode. That will also be explored next episode. But just the concept of it does not make sense. And if, say, these rumors are true, once again, it's the Russo brothers undoing something they set in motion.
Yes.
Now, obviously, they didn't set Thor Ragnarok in motion, but they sat there and completely undid everything that happened in that movie.
Down to
And
the
so,
eyeball.
down to the eyeball and Stormbreaker or like Mjolnir, like, and the haircut. Like, I mean, whatever. Anyway, I think it would be very aggravating to me, especially too, because like they went out of their way to say, no, they were supposed to do all of that. Everything that happened was supposed to happen. And as fans, regardless of how you feel about Steve going back or not, again, that was my big point just right now, is it never made sense as far as the whole like put everything back exactly where you put it and like whatever. His path was never actually supposed to be that. I also want to point out, this was the other part that I was like, we're going to get to this. I don't understand how you defeat 2014 Thanos and he's gone. You don't put Thanos back in 2014. So what just happened to that timeline?
That's a branch.
Right. But that doesn't make sense to me.
I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying that's the answer.
No, I know, but
they would give you.
that's the problem, is you cannot watch Endgame and have them explain to you how this works because they don't follow their own rules in the same movie. Like, how do you take? I still don't even understand how Gamora stayed out of the 2014 timeline. That
Hello?
doesn't make sense.
Cap comes back at the end to give Sam the shield, which is the right decision. I'm not debating that piece of it. Yes, 100% give Sam the shield, right? Great choice. But I am questioning the logistics of how that happened because when he chose to stay in 1940, whatever, with Peggy, he created another universe. So if that man only had one Pym particle to come back, he used it and now he's stuck in our universe. But I don't even know that you can use Pym particles to go across universes. It should just be time. So make it make sense. How did Old Man Cap come back? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's my point too, is like right now we don't know the multiverse is or is not open. Obviously, we had our theory about from last week that in 2012 when they went back and they took this, or I don't even know what. Oh no, in 2018 when Thanos snapped and destroyed the stones, that time when he was on his little farm, that's when the multiverse opened. That was like the theory of that possibility because they said that the stones are like the backbone of the universe and they hold everything together.
Right.
So that's just a theory though. Like
Yeah.
that is not like legit. So if we're just going off the fact that multiverse does not exist, everything that happens here doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand how Cap going back makes any sense because here's the other thing. Putting aside that Peggy Carter had her own show, we even see in the movie itself that she clearly went on and lived a life.
Yeah.
Like, it's proven that she went on and lived a life. So I guess I'm trying to understand, like, and mind you, she does have her own show that proved she went on and lived a life.
That technically you can say is 616 Peggy, who lives her life without Steve, the same way that the Peggy they see in the 70s lived her life without Steve. But the Peggy in the branch, because he created a branch. If we're going to use TVA's crappy
what doesn't
terms,
make sense is if that's true, the TVA is actively pruning.
I don't know how that survived.
That's my point. So like, even if we do say, oh, the multiverse was open, it does not make sense. And I just don't understand why, to some regard, like they were like, no, it's not the butterfly effect. But then like they did all this crap that like, also, you cannot tell me that Steve could have come back to this timeline or like ended up living in this timeline like that was meant to happen when, like, what did he just do for the past 70 years? What did he just do? Genuinely. Also, I know they can argue the super soldier thing, but like he should be dead. Age-wise?
Well, no.
Yeah.
He would be like 100. There are still people who fought in World War II that are alive. I mean, there are definitely not a lot of them.
No, he wouldn't be because he had to at least be like at least 20.
Right.
I mean, I guess.
I'm just saying, like, look at our world now. Like, that was 2023. We're in the year 2025. There are still people who fought in World War II who were alive. Clearly, there's not a lot. Like, the majority of them have passed on, but there are people who have had longevity.
I mean, that's fair. That's fine. That's not my main point. Regardless, I just so fed up because this whole thing doesn't make sense. Like, and with the whole thing with Thanos, I don't understand at all how you took Thanos out of 2014, killed him, like he's gone, gone, zero existence, and then like I just none of it really makes sense to
Well,
me.
that branch would technically that would technically become a branch. Like a Thanos-less 2014 pre Guardians of the Galaxy, that's where that would branch off. So like that universe that would become a branch universe pre Guardians.
But I don't even want to talk about the branches. I'm just talking about in the actual Endgame movie. As you're watching this movie, when you are following the rules that they have set, how does it make sense that you killed Thanos from 2014? Because at that point, why didn't y'all just go to 2014 and kill Thanos? Like, Rhodey's idea of like, why don't we just like, kind of off him? Why didn't we do that? And it was actively explained that we couldn't do that,
Well, because they're not killing him because they want to kill a past version so he doesn't like get the stones.
which I get. But again, it's the way that this is not, there's no continuity from how it's explained to how it actually plays out. At the end of the day, theoretically, you could have just done that
Look,
because it's almost worse the way it plays out.
Look, here's what I'm going to say. The problems of the multiverse saga started here.
Yes.
Like, let's be honest. This film set a shaky foundation for an entire. Like, it is both a good and a bad film in terms of like large saga experiences. It does a relatively good job of wrapping up the Infinity Saga into a pretty nice bow and like allowing characters to move forward from it who the powers that be at Marvel decided were going to continue on and continue telling stories. Give them an A for that. However, they get a big fat F minus for setting the foundation for the multiverse saga because to your point and to all of your examples, it is self-contradictory. Then it, as we talked about last week, it goes against basically any any pop culture references that we do have for time travel. So you're trying to teach an all new set of rules to people when they've had every other time travel related piece of content that they've ever seen. Tell them the opposite. Already you're fighting an uphill battle. You self contradict. Then you have subsequent projects that are direct sequels to this. I'm looking at you, Loki season 1, that then add layers that one complicate and two also contradict. So it is a challenge when it comes to like they already set themselves up for failure for them in the multiverse saga within this film itself, which is a bummer to say, but it's true.
It is true. And that's why at the very beginning of this, I straight up even said, you can't even watch Endgame and Endgame makes sense.
No.
It is frustrating because you can almost tell this movie had to be shot in segments. And like they forgot what they did in the first segment. And it's fine, but it is frustrating because we did build an entire saga off of it. And so when you don't have any sort of foundation that actually works in the initial film, you do just leave it all up to interpretation by the next 17 projects. And it is frustrating because we also have a time jump. Like, that's something that all those projects have to take into consideration to begin with, let alone the fact that the multiverse opens somewhere. Again, we don't actually have a definitive point in which the multiverse opens. And we just have assumptions and theories. And then we sit here and we do have Loki that is so based off of it. And yet all it does is make it worse.
Yeah.
Like, it's just is such a headache to try. Because, like, at a base level, Loki's reasoning behind the whole TVA stuff makes sense.
Yeah.
It does to a degree. Like, I get the whole we prune the sacred. Like, I can understand that if we had nothing else throwing
if that was
itself
the
at
first
me.
project.
Yeah.
And then we use that as the foundational element from which we discuss the multiverse 100%.
Well, I also think the problem is is in that project to try and fix whatever else you decide to change. It was, well, the Avengers were supposed to do that.
Yeah, what a cop out.
It is a cop out. It's their way of saying we don't actually understand what they did in Endgame and how they handled that. So anyway, we're just going to say that and make it seem like everything was meant to happen how it was, and we're going to proceed forward with how we understand the timeline and everything else of that nature. Like that is what that was, and it's extremely aggravating.
I agree. I'm tired of talking about time travel.
Me too. Get me off it.
Yeah, so let's talk about Morag because I think it's a really good gateway into 2014 and then subsequently the later battle. The big thing I think that I forgot about the trip to Morag is that Nebula basically like accidentally is a traitor. And I feel really bad for her because she really is just like doing the most. She is like on mission. She is doing her thing. She is like, I'm an Avenger. Heck yeah. Like all this stuff. And then she sabotages herself, like not even subconsciously. It's just like another version of herself. And that sucks.
No, because I genuinely forgot this part of the movie.
Same.
I don't know how, because it's such a crucial part to how we get to where we get. I totally forgot about that part of the movie. It does lead me to question, because I guess it only happened because she was also in 2014, but it does kind of lead me to question like how she could possibly be connecting to herself in general. Like I was like,
Dude,
this is
I
strange.
just was like, face value, heck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's fair. We're gonna move on from that. Either way, though, it is interesting because I think how they did that obviously was to bring Thanos in, but it was also to keep Gamora's story going,
Yeah.
which is funny now that you've like seen Guardians 3 and how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I definitely forgot about it just from a whole. I didn't remember this happening. I do think it's an interesting way to have told the story because I think we so heartedly see Gamora turn her back on Thanos because she never wants to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think kind of painting to Thanos how far even Nebula goes, I think is really an interesting and probably like quite the slap in the face. But I also really do like that it's the way that they move about. Like I think I don't know how else you would have done it. So I do think it was just so smart to have Nebula be the one that accidentally connects the pieces literally of herself and then is the one who brings in Thanos. Like I think it's extremely smart because at the end of the day, that was always 2014 Nebula's goal.
Yeah, it is definitely, you're right. It's such a good like plot device. And I don't mean to like diminish it by saying it's a plot device, but it's a good way to get that story rolling while still actually being able to highlight her in a film of heavy hitters, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, you see her in Infinity War. She kind of screws things up on Titan, and we talked about that at length, but you see that version of her that is around in 2023 and then you see the version of her in 2014 and it's such a stark relief, right? And so it like shows even more how much she's grown and how much she's changed. And then it's interesting to explore kind of the idea of shame around her because you can see how embarrassed she is that because she is, and I'm going to use air quotes because I mean this in the absolute loosest way possible, she is enhanced by Thanos and like she's so ashamed of the way that has happened to her. And she and Rhodey actually have a really beautiful moment where he says, oh, you work with what you got, right? And I think it's moments like that where she's starting to recalibrate her experience and learn to accept herself and move forward. So she's this character who's gone through so much and she's had such a beautiful growth experience, and then she's slapped in the face by the fact that the thing that she is so ashamed of is putting the entire mission, the entire universe in jeopardy. And to not even mention that, she has to see herself at her absolute worst and know that the people that she has come to respect and care for and who have come to respect and care for her see her at her worst because none of these people had ever seen that version of her. She was so far along in her journey before they ever met her.
Well, what I will say though, and correct me if I'm wrong, I actually think they don't. Because I think the only one who actually sees the second nebula, the actual second nebula, and realizes what happened was Clint.
Yes.
So actually nobody really sees it, which I actually think is a good point to who she is that like she is so worried about who she was to a degree and like her past. And I think Gamora has the same problem where
Mhm.
they both are just so inherently tied to who they were always that they don't always give themselves the chance to think that they've grown.
Yeah.
And so I think it was like such a nice thing to be like, no, we're not going to blame this whole thing on you. Like, down to the fact that even Tony sat there, obviously didn't know in the moment what was going on, but Tony was like, you mess with time, it messes with you back. Like, nobody knew what happened. Clint still didn't know what happened. He just saw a second nebula. So, like, I think kind of giving her that grace in which nobody really like actually knows what went down, I think was such a nice thing to do for her character because her character has never really gotten that same leeway.
No, that's such a good point. It is. I really do like that were able to focus on her because I think we spent so much time with the OG6 and focused on them, and it was cool to see her have this moment to both shine and also be like problem child number one accidentally. So it's interesting.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the OG6, obviously, Ant Man is so involved because of the quantum tunnel and everything else. And then, you do have her and Rocket that kind of stick out like sore thumbs.
Yeah,
And I would say we don't really focus too much on Rocket. I do think he acts as a plot device to kind of push Thor a little bit.
agreed.
But otherwise, he's really not a main focus in this. So I do think, but to be fair, he like owns the Guardian franchise. So I think that's okay for him to have had that step back because also then Guardians 3 was literally about his entire backstory,
Yeah.
as traumatizing as it was.
Yeah. There was a moment, I don't know if it was this movie or I think it was this one because I remember hearing it and being like, well, Guardians 3 debunked that. He said something about never having had a family or like this was the only family he's ever had. And I was like, you retconned that though.
Yeah, but in those heightened moments, that might be how he just feels. Like he might have already, in his own way, grieved the family he did have. I mean, they were literally slaughtered. So, and maybe not grieved is the right word, but he might just feel a different connection with these people at this point, and he lost them all in a very different way. So, yes, maybe on the surface it could be retcon, but I think maybe deep down you could maybe excuse it.
Fair. You know how I love or hate like when they do stuff like that. And it's like,
No, and I do too. I definitely I get it because literally they undid all of Thor's,
yeah,
whatever. I would have spent a little bit of time on the final battle because we'd be like super remiss if we didn't.
yeah.
It was obviously great. Actually, I have to say this is where I did cry. This is where I cried.
Like a baby for 20 minutes, the entire battle.
I mean, I didn't cry the entire battle. I cried when like as soon as Sam hit the like, "Hey Cap, are you there?" And then like T'Challa and Shuri and Okoye walked through the first portal. I literally was like, "Oh my god, like I'm
Full
gonna
body
cry."
chills.
I don't actually know if I cried. I don't remember if I cried during this part in Endgame. I know obviously I sobbed during Natasha's part. That's like a core memory for me. But I do have to say, like, I just think this final battle is so well done. And the one thing I want to just bring attention to, because I know this had so much discourse when this movie first came out, the whole scene where all the women team up and they do the whole like he's not alone. I have no problem with it. And I didn't have a problem with it before, but watching it back I'm like it didn't really feel forced. And that was what a lot of people who had real like thoughts about it beyond just oh my god, it's all the women, blah 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 blah. A lot of the people who had real discourse with it were saying like it just felt forced. I don't think it did.
I think it did a little bit. Like to have all of them in the same area of this like spread out massive battle and to like each one comes in, it did feel to me forced.
But we see them all come in because they're trying to protect the gauntlet.
I guess, but like where were the men doing that? Like you know what I'm saying? Like I just feel like I appreciate the effort and that they tried, but it did feel like, oh, you're just gonna like make this shoehorned moment for the women because you're telling me there wasn't a single man in the area that was gonna come over and it's just this shot of the women. That kind of like, is a little bit beyond what I would think is normal.
It didn't really sit weird for me. I didn't remember it sitting weird the first time either.
The first time I didn't really think about it. This time, obviously, I am aware of like all of the conversation. So I knew it was coming and I was like, yeah, I see it. I see it. I'm
See,
not
I
bothered
really
by it,
didn't. I
but it
really
just doesn't
didn't.
feel natural.
I mean, I think because everybody was trying to protect the Infinity Gauntlet and everything of that nature, I really just didn't feel strange. I just was like, of course, like they're the first ones to go towards it, like whatever. And I mean, quite frankly, I mean, I don't know, it just didn't bother me. And I think the other thing is it's so short that I was like, this was a lot of discourse for like 10, not
30-second
even,
scene.
yeah, like I was like, this was really not that deep, that I don't think we needed to be that bothered by it. I also do think like it's not like the women didn't have plenty of time to shine. Like Hope coming back, her and Ant-Man were the ones with the going to the quantum tunnel, or like the quantum whatever, the van. Obviously Captain Marvel comes flying in and takes down the entirety of Thanos' shit, which is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Wanda had her moment to shine where she literally almost killed Thanos and he had to fire on his own troops to get her to stop.
Yeah.
Like, I think we had a lot of awesome women moments. I mean, Pepper came in and wore the suit for the first and only time. Like,
When she and Tony were fighting together, I was like,
yeah,
that
well,
I
that's what
that
I
hit
mean.
me. That
Like,
was
they all had
yeah.
these moments. I mean, even you had Valkyrie come in fully back in on a Pegasus. I didn't really understand how that made sense. I'm gonna be honest, but whatever.
I mean, maybe it's in a stall in, New Asgard, and when they
Yeah,
picked her
like
up, she
she
just
just
grabbed her
found her
Pegasus.
Pegasus. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Obviously.
Sure. Like, yeah, that didn't really make sense to me upon second watch, but I was like, okay, yeah, of course. Also, like, if she was dusted, like, I guess my thought process was like, well, Ragnarok happened like right before Infinity War. So, like,
She wasn't dusted though. We know she wasn't.
oh, that's right. Well, I guess I'm always thrown off because I forget that everybody who like comes through the tunnels weren't actually people who.
Yeah. They just literally picked up everybody.
Yes, this is true. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel weird about it because it also was so short lived that I was like, okay, like whatever. Also, like the men all got their scenes.
Oh, look, I think there's a difference between feeling like, yeah, it was probably forced, and being like, I have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. I just feel like it wasn't the most natural thing. To your point, I would have rather they kept doing the scenes of the women being baddies on their own versus like, let's put all of the women in one shot. But I don't hate that they did it.
Well, I also do think it was a callback to Infinity War, which I liked.
Which part?
When I forget what her face is, one of Thanos' children was like something about you're
Oh, she's
alone
not
and Black
alone.
Widow. And that to me was so impactful because Black Widow paved the way to have all these female characters. So to me, I was like, that's really like, that pulled at my heartstrings because I literally was like, that is such a good callback to be like, when everybody needed her, Natasha was there, and now these women are all coming together to support, for Peter to get him through with the Infinity Gauntlet, to get it where it needs to go and get it off the battlefield. Like, I thought that's what made that more powerful and less forced, because I was like, these are the women coming together the same way Natasha would have done, and what she paved the way for these female superheroes in the MCU to do.
No, that's a good point. I mean, look, again, I was never upset by it. You can feel how you want to feel in terms of like whether or not it's natural in the scene or natural in the battle. But I'm appreciative again that they tried, because I think it would have been very easy to give no screen time or very little screen time to a lot of these women. Like, where the heck was Shuri? I think we see her twice. So, like, there's definitely women who like get overlooked in this battle. So, I appreciate the effort, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's fine. Either way, the battle was great. Obviously, we win. Yay, yippee. I mean, there's not many details about the battle I fear I need to go into beyond it was entertaining. They did a great job.
I will say though, I mean, Cap with Mjolnir is kind of like,
Yeah, I guess though, like the novelty of that wore off because like nobody stopped talking about it ever. And so like I guess like even when I watched it, I was like, this isn't the same, just because like I think what's so cool about going back 6 years later is so much of the stuff you do forget when you haven't watched it. That's just something nobody ever forgot. So I guess like it just doesn't hit the same when you just always knew it was coming.
sure. I guess for me, it's like I haven't watched it in so long that like the excitement is almost like there anew. Like, yes, I knew it was coming, but it's still so cool to like watch this man one, pick up Mjolnir. Two, besties like level of excitement about it when Thor's like, I knew it. I knew my guy could do this. And three, like that moment when like Cap stands there, Shield holding his arm together on one side and Mjolnir on the other, alone against Thanos and his army. Like that shot is just so
Oh, yeah.
it's just so good.
Yeah. No, I totally
I mean,
agree.
and then he says Avengers Assemble, and it's like I mean, yeah. I cried the whole time. I just was like joy. Just joy.
Yeah, well, that's why I mean, like, when I should say when I say there's nothing more to talk about with the battle, it's not because I don't think it was amazing. I think it was amazing. Therefore, I don't need to pick at it beyond what it gave us.
Yeah.
I will say something I noticed and I didn't like, and this wasn't the battle, it was after, was when they were like doing Tony's voiceover before we realized it's like his hologram and stuff. And he was like, families reuniting. I hope we do this, like all this. I didn't like that they really only did show literally our MCU families like coming back together. So, like, obviously, we saw, and this was like a horrible image after we know everything that goes on, but we saw T'Challa with his mother and Shuri.
Mhm.
We see Clint with his family. Who's the other one?
Scott and Hope, and I
Yeah.
think the Pym. Yeah, both Pyms are there. Both well, Janet Van Dyne and Hank Pym.
Oh, I don't remember seeing them in that. But
Yeah.
either I'm sure they are. I really whatever. But I guess what frustrated me a little bit was I was like, I get the whole point is like we're showing that like, oh, families are back together, people are reuniting. But I was like, we're really ignoring a big chunk of the heroes who are not returning to people. And like I think why that bothered me was because when they made that line about that I mentioned earlier when they were like, well, we were her family for Natasha, that's true for some of those other members as well. So I think I was a little bothered, like, just in general, to kind of just be like, well, you only show the people who actually had families. And I guess, like, it just, like, felt weird. Like, it implied the other ones kind of didn't, in which case, then I was like, that's fine. But then what? Like, I know Wanda and Clint have their moment later on, which don't get me started on just in general, like, how they decided to handle that. But, like, Wanda's one of them. Like, I was like, poor girl doesn't like I don't know. It just felt really weird to me.
Well, I think they show her at the funeral, right? So it's like
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It did just feel weird. I wanted to kind of see how everybody else fit back into the equation. Like Hulk's been around, but like who did he miss? Like I guess like I just wanted to see where everybody else was affected because that was the whole thing. Like we lived, but at what cost? Like I think I just wanted to see a little bit more of like everybody getting back together. Like even the Guardians, like we didn't actually see the Guardians really fully get back together.
yeah. I mean, even just beyond the heroes, like the world and the universe came back together and we didn't see any of that.
No, and I mean, I know you said beyond just the heroes, but I just have to say, when you market the entire movie, because don't think I forgot, you market the entire movie that everybody had a half that got, snapped. That was literally how the entire marketing was. Don't think I forgot the half face and one side was black and white. Like, I know, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I remember.
Yeah.
And then to never have them like show really them all interacting again with the half that they felt was lost, like, really frustrated me.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like, "Oh shoot, we ran out of time and it's already a 3-hour movie."
Yes. But I was like, I mean, the fact we don't actually see Cap interact with Bucky
Yeah. Or Sam.
well, we do at the very, very end. But what really frustrated me was then at that scene at the very, very end, you could clearly tell that Bucky and Steve had a conversation because, I mean, we pointed this out before in general as a fandom. Bucky knew he wasn't coming back. But
Yeah.
not only that, I noticed that Bucky knew that Sam was going to get that shield.
Yeah.
Like maybe I just never noticed that before. But I sat there and I was like, so they clearly had a conversation. I don't mean I needed to see the conversation. I did not. But like, we don't see these two interact at any point on the screen.
Yeah. I know last week we like waxed poetic about how good this film is, and it still is a good film, but there are some choices that they made in terms of how they allocated the time and where they spent time that I think should have been reallocated. Like
Yes.
we talked about it last week, but they spent too much time in 2018. They should have shortened that piece in order to spend more time in 2023 exploring the true implications of the blip, but then also to give more time for the actual reunification of a lot of these heroes. And that is my soapbox.
Yeah, that's That's the way to say it.
Yeah.
Because I guess, like, I wasn't explaining it well when I was like, well, we only see the ones with their families, but, like, we just don't see, like, everybody come back to the people they actually lost.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of frustrating. Like I
So
said,
then what was it all for? Like, what's the payoff?
right.
You know, you don't actually see the payoff.
Right. Like, yeah, they all come back for the big battle, but like, I wish we would have actually seen them be interacting with each other. Like, also the fact that, like, obviously we didn't have time for this because it was part of how, like, it needed to play out. But like, Doctor Strange was dusted, Wong wasn't. That's how Wong becomes Sorcerer Supreme. We never see those two come, like, they just interact and they're like, is that everybody? And he's like, you wanted more? But we don't actually see, like, Doctor Strange return or anything of this nature until they all show up on that battle. So, like, I don't know. I do find that a little frustrating to me that, like, we just, the only time we got it was Tony and Peter. Genuinely.
Yeah.
That's the only time we saw that interaction of people returning. And so, I mean, even like we see Rocket and Groot together, but we don't see Rocket reacting to Groot returning. Like, it's just, I think we need to see that as the fans of seeing. And again, like, when you are marketing this whole movie, somebody's missing their other half, and then you don't really show them interacting with the other half that was dusted. Like, it is very just strange.
It's like you were like at the half-yard line of the end zone and you just didn't get over the mark to like get the touchdown. It's like, "Oh, we defeated Thanos. Oh, we, brought everybody back," but you don't actually get to see any of the people coming back together and
Yeah.
like obviously we didn't have time for everybody, but like to your point, like there were a few that we could have shown to just give that emotional depth back.
We don't even see Captain Marvel actually interact with Nick Fury.
I know. After like 30 years.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. I was, and not to mention, then that man is in her next movie. So I was like, wait, we're not even going to get anything? It could have been a 10-second scene. I don't care. We're not getting anything?
You know what I would have loved that they would have done? You know how the Snyderverse has like the Snyder cut of the Justice League?
Yeah. And like re-released a full version.
Yeah, like what I wouldn't give for and that's like a 6-hour movie. Trust me, I watched it.
I'd do it.
I would watch a 6-hour Russo cut of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Like even the scene that we're all so frustrated that they cut where they're kneeling after Tony died and it's like this
Yes.
sign of like respect. Why that ever got cut, like truly beyond me. It's a 10
They said
second
that
scene.
I think they felt like it didn't make sense because a lot of these people didn't know who he was, but I was like, the point, and so it felt inauthentic. And I was like, well, to me that doesn't make sense because whether you knew who he was or it wasn't, he just sacrificed his life for the world,
He
the
just
universe.
he gave his life for everything. Like
yeah.
you don't need to know somebody to be like, I respect that move.
Yeah.
Like that is that's a hero. Yeah, that's a wild justification for leaving out what I would think is an incredibly moving scene, but
Yes, I agree.
whatever. I think I've touched on pretty much everything because I know we're gonna get a lot of the like final scene around the shield passing and all of that when we talk about Cap next week. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
The only thing I'm going to throw out there is I think now that I know what we've seen in phases 4 and 5 and everything, I think it is safe to say the heart of the Avengers died with Natasha Romanoff.
Fair.
And I think if you just need one clear example, it's the fact, like, it's everything that happened with Wanda.
Yeah, not on Natasha's watch.
Well, and it shouldn't have happened on Clint's either. It's
No.
the fact that just, they wanted to, it's weird that they threw in Endgame, them clearly emphasizing still their close relationship, and then they decided to have Clint completely forget she existed. Like, I think that in its own way shows that when Natasha went, the heart and the caring for one another and the actual family aspect of the Avengers went with her.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, and then to even have him in New York months after she was in New Jersey, putting people in her mind prison.
And
wild.
we just don't know anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Quite the choice. Well, that's part 2 of 3. We've now covered the plot of the film, but we have a lot to talk about with our big 3. So we'll be back again next week with part 3 of 3 related to Avengers Endgame. If you have been enjoying our replay series, make sure that you subscribe on your podcast platform of choice so that you can find us whenever we have new episodes. As always, you can check out our website, which is linked below, as well as our Buy Me a Coffee if you want to help support us. We appreciate it. You don't have to, but it is, something that we'd be grateful if you made that choice.
You guys can also follow us on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes down below. And as T kind of said, we will be doing one more Endgame related episode talking about the big three and their character development, specifically in Endgame, because we have a lot to say about them. So make sure you guys tune in for that. I'm sure there's going to be some interesting pieces, as I know, especially Thor has been a character and his development that has been quite contested over the years. So make sure you guys tune in. And until next time, Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.